Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. This is the ARPA Institute panel discussion, panel discussion about wine technology in Armenia. Welcome, everybody. I'm Hovhannisyan, the president of ARPA Institute. I would like to say a few words about the ARPA Institute before we start. ARPA Institute has been working in Armenia for the past 33 years, and we have achieved quite a few projects in the past. But the most recent ones that we are working on right now are our annual invention competition for young scientists in Armenia. And that has been going on for about 16 years. And what we do is we receive inventions from all topics from Armenia, from young scientists or graduate students with their advisors. And then we send them to experts for evaluation. They are evaluated. The first part of the evaluation is essentially a summary of what they have in mind and what they have produced as far as data. And that is being evaluated, actually was evaluated already. We have selected from 11 inventions that we received this year. We have selected 5 of them, and we have asked now the 5 winners or semi-winners to send a full proposal of what they have done. And those full proposals we send to experts, and they are all evaluated at least by 5 experts each. And then we decide the winner, and the winner receives $10,000. The winner sometimes is a single person, sometimes it could be a team of different people with their advisors, sometimes with the graduate students. So that's one of our projects. And then the other one, we have now established a Center of Excellence for Circuit Design in the Polytechnic University, where software that was actually donated by Cadence is being used. And the experts from Cisco and Cadence are teaching the circuit design process. And the idea is to not only teach students circuit design, but also do advanced work eventually and have research in circuit design for Armenia. The reason we established this is because we thought large companies like NVIDIA and AMD, I'm sorry, will be interested in such activities and they will need people, experts in circuit design. We also have established the first Class 1000 clean room in Armenia, and it is currently being used. We have also, of course, uh, essentially filled it with the most important instrumentation for research. A clean room, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a facility where very sensitive experimentation takes place. And so that is already being in working condition. The second project in Aslanian National Lab is a detection lab. We also provide guidance and assistance and even instrumentation to the detection lab on nuclear physics detectors. And the third one is a radio frequency photomultiplier tube that is being already um, we are now producing a prototype of it, the most recent prototype, which will even make it better. Right now, it is able to detect laser pulses down to a picosecond accuracy. So that's another project. And also we have activities with other institutes of the Academy of Sciences, like the Molecular Biology Institute, Physical Research Institute, Chemical Physics Institute, and many others. And also we work, of course, with the Yerevan State University and the government of Armenia to make sure that we are on the same page and we can work together to advance science, technology, healthcare, and many other areas. If you have expertise in any of these areas or any other area, please let us know. We would like to have people to work with us and advance these areas in Armenia. Right now, I would like to introduce our moderator, Vahan Zanoyan, who is also actually known for his book on wine. And also he has been an executive in petroleum engineering, and he has traveled the world. He is an expert in security issues, and therefore today he will be guiding the discussion. Vahan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hagop. This is actually a pleasure. And lately, you have been having very intense discussions on national security, Armenia, and so on, kind of tense discussions. I'm glad we finally have a relatively happier topic
Yes.
to talk about, because this is actually, in fact, it is a happy topic in many senses. Number one, wine is a happy topic, but number two, wine has been one of the success stories in Armenia in the past since independence. So I'm glad to be moderating this session. Another reason I'm glad is because we have an incredible panel. We have 5 people, 3 of which have joined us. The other 2 we're waiting. I hope they do join us. But between these 5 people on the panel, basically it is the main driving forces, if I can say, or at least part of the main driving force behind the renaissance of the wine industry in Armenia since independence. I will briefly introduce each person and then summarize some of the themes that we'll be discussing. And even if I will introduce briefly even those who are not present yet. The panel consists of Vahe Keushguerian. Those who know Vahe know that his name is fully 100% associated with wine in Armenia now, even though he's done wine business elsewhere in the world in the past. But his main claim to fame is that he's a very close, lifelong friend of mine. We went to the same high school back in like many, many years ago in Beirut. He, aside from his own wines, the main brands being Zulal and Kösh, Vahe has been instrumental in expanding the labels in Armenia. He's an incubator. Last I checked, I don't know, Vahe, I may be wrong, but at least dozen other labels that you produce, that you help produce, but which are not part of your immediate ownership. Another aspect of Vahe is that he's been adamant about protecting and resurrecting old, very old Armenian varieties of grapes. Mary Hovhannisyan is a dedicated vintner, taking over or participating in a family business of Voskevaz. She is adamant about protecting indigenous, about bridging the tradition of winemaking in Armenia with modern ways and means. She's also been extremely active in promoting Armenian wines, in marketing it professionally, and also in educating people on how to actually appreciate wine. Wine tasting and wine appreciation is a whole different art, and that was one of the big gaps in Armenia when I first came to Armenia way before independence. Adam Kablanian, another close friend, he is an entrepreneur. He's brought new entrepreneurial approach actually to the wine business, and he has introduced some new non-indigenous Armenian varieties in Armenia, including Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Riesling, and I think a whole slew of new ones that are coming to this year's harvest that Adam can talk about. And and this itself, bringing non-indigenous grapes, but growing them in Armenian terroir, is an interesting outcome. And some of his wines, by the way, I love the Chardonnay Voskehat blend. It's one of my favorites. Victoria Aslanian, who is not here yet, and those of you who have ever been through the Armas tour with Victoria guiding it, I'm sure you've seen the incredible passion she has for wine and winemaking and for the history of it. She's also been very involved in like mentoring young women. She's been involved with charitable NGOs. And she's won more prizes than I care than we have time right now for me to list. Armas is an incredible winery, by the way. If you haven't been there, it's worth a visit. Finally, my old friend Hovakim Saghatelyan, who I really hope joins, because Hovakim is what I call our philosopher winemaker. He's not just a winemaker, he's a philosopher. He's written a beautiful little book called Aigi about vineyards and what they mean. He is passionate about tradition. Everything Hovhakim does has to be done in the traditional way. He has even like harvesting. I've been to his vineyards. When we harvesting is done in the old Armenian tradition. Well, but in spite of this emphasis on tradition, he's also adopted the most modern practices in his vineyard in Aghavnazor, and where he has now sustainable grape growing and almost borderline organic. These are our 5 panelists, and we cannot go wrong with, if anyone in the audience is truly interested in the both history and future of the wine business in Armenia, this is one of the best panels I could imagine. But since there was so much emphasis on the history of wine, and lately there's been some debates about who invented wine. Armenians say we did, Georgians say no, we did, and if Iran hadn't been an Islamic republic, probably Iranians would say no, we did. I've taken the privilege of being moderator to make a very short 4-minute presentation on the geography and history of wine. I will share a few slides now. Give me just a second. Okay. Can everybody see the slide? Okay.
Yes.
Very brief comments about geography and history. One interesting thing which I find fascinating is that almost all, very few exceptions, which I'll come to, almost all grapes in the world, on the planet, grow on 2 belts between 30 degrees parallel and 50-degree parallel north, and same exact mirror image, 30-degree parallel and 50-degree parallel south. Imagine 2 belts around planet Earth. On the north side, you have the basic suspects, Napa, Bordeaux, Tuscany, Armenia, all these are there. And on the southern belt, you have the usual suspect, Chilean, Argentinian, South African, New Zealand. Let me remove this. Now, there are some exceptions. All the exceptions are in the north. In here around, most British and German wines are 51 degrees and so on. And the northernmost point where there's ever been a grape or winemaking grape is in some place called Flen, Sweden, which is at 59. But the rest, there are no exceptions on the rest. What's interesting is Areni is smack in the middle of this range, 30 to 50. Areni is on the 40-degree parallel. Bordeaux is on 44. Napa is 38.5. I mean, these are roughly on the same parallel on the planet Earth. Nothing else grows in between, and nothing else grows above or below the southern belt. No, I don't mean nothing else. I mean no other grapes. Now, the question, of course, arises, okay, see, if I have a vineyard in one of these belts, am I set? Can I start my vineyard? Actually, no. It's necessary, but not sufficient condition is to be here. The the sufficient condition is a term called terroir, which all the winemakers here know very well. And terroir is a very broad term. I have here the Webster definition, but it goes, in fact, much beyond the Webster definition. It is everything, geology, chemistry, number of days of rain, number of sunshine, humidity, chemistry, unique. All these things make what a terroir is. And terroir is very sensitive. It's shut titiz in Armenian. You can have one terroir, one side of a mountain range, totally different on the other side, and so on. Now, these two ideas bring me to the birthplace of wine. The birthplace of wine is a complicated issue. There's a lot of politics involved in here, and there is a lot of national pride involved. But basically, there is a legend on the right side. You see the Genesis, the Bible, where Noah's Ark landed right on these two dots here. But the science of it also confirms this red triangle you see between a point 1, 2, and 3. These points are points where different ancient, very ancient wine evidence was found. One is here in Shulaveri in Georgia. There was like some 6,000 BC. There were 6,000 BC. Imagine hundreds of genetic grapes were found, which are still existing today, which shows that long that those grapes existed. Here in Haji Firuz in Iran, similarly, urns were found with wine residue, which had the same genetic formation as now. And then finally, in today's Turkey, which is actually in old Urartian part of Armenia, which I'll come to in a minute, there were also very ancient, over 6,000-year-old evidences. So if you take these 3 points and the triangle in the middle, inside this triangle is full of historic evidence that probably the earliest evidence exists within this small red triangle. That's where it all began. Now, what I'd like to emphasize is back 6,000, 8,000 years ago, there was no Armenia, there was no Iran, there was no Turkey, there was no Georgia. So when we say we invented wine, wine was there before us. So guys, okay, let's put the pride a little bit aside here and come to this other chart here. Same map I've taken, and here is where our famous Armenian cave is, where the whole 6,100-year-old winery is. Here is the Urartian kingdom of Van, which, according to my friend, archaeologist Boris Kasparyan, they were the largest and best winemakers in the ancient world. And these guys were adamant about trying to find new wine terroir. They started traveling. They were in search of terroir. To this day, famous vintners go looking for good terroir to plant new vineyards. So this tradition that started 4,000 years ago still continues today, by the way. That's how one of the famous winemakers in San Francisco arrived in Armenia and built a winery there, the Hobbs. They were looking out for new terroir. The Urartians, according to Boris Kasparyan, came to Armenia around 4,000 years ago, 3,500 to 4,000 years ago. When they reached Areni, they found such incredible terroir that they stayed. And these guys didn't come to occupy, to rape, to pillage. They weren't like the Mongolian invaders, okay? These guys came strictly to look for new terroir, for new wine production. When they found Areni, they stayed. They built temples. They mixed with the local population. If they hadn't found that terroir, they would have moved on. They would have moved on into Iran or Georgia or somewhere, but they stayed. And the fact that the Urartians stayed has a lot to do with the current genetic formation of Armenians. So I would argue Armenians didn't invent wine. Wine invented Armenians, because without that wine terroir, this genetic fusion wouldn't have happened. Okay. Now, that's my just in my addition to Boris Kasparyan's analysis, by the way, he didn't say that, I'm saying that. With this little introduction, I will stop here and we'll start in turn with the panelists. I hope some of the others have joined, I'm not sure. But the first one on the panel is Vahe Keushguerian. Vahejan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vahan. That was a lovely presentation. A lot of information I hadn't heard or I hadn't seen the perspective, put it in perspective. Let's put it that way. Anyway, thank you, Hovakim, for this opportunity, and that together with our colleagues, we're going to discuss some topics that are pertinent to the wine industry. I'm going to focus on 2 points, honestly, and mostly relating to marketing and sales. I think we have done a good job in innovation. I think we're doing a good job in all varieties, and this is an ongoing process. There's no stopping. You're figuring out and working on terroir or technical parts of it. I think every winery is doing it. Some researchers are doing it. But I think we are lagging on 2 things that we need to take care of. And this is pertinent to the whole industry, not for me or any other particular winery, but for us all. One, and I say this in the context, in the perspective that I am feeling we are reaching a plateau. So we have to take it a notch. So we have to increase things by an order of magnitude. Yes, we are making more wine. Yes, we are making better quality wine. But if we will do that and the world doesn't know, what is the point of it? And if we want to grow the industry, then we need to think about it a little bit more scientifically and more intensely. So, first point where we can do things collectively, be it the Wine and Wine Foundation, Wines of Armenia, or any other collective effort that we can put together, is the marketing. Unfortunately, to date, we don't have a good messaging for the industry. We go from the sacred land to the newest, oldest world or oldest, newest world. So every couple of years we change the messaging. So we have not, we don't know what words to use, when to use, and how to use them, so that when people keep hearing it, they get the message quickly and efficiently. I'm talking about the consumers, so that they know, oh, this is the oldest, or this is the one of the oldest, or this is the one with the volcanic terroir, or we have the highest elevation vineyards. Whatever it is, we have to have a relatively similar messaging, so that we always hammer that. And this is a scientific thing, by the way. It can be done in research to see which words, which message resonates with consumers, and so on and so forth, in addition to identifying who our audience is, because Armenia is not a huge country, so we don't need to appeal to every sector, from consumers in the UK that are looking for 299 wines to sophisticated sommeliers in New York that are looking for the latest new thing, something that it resonates with them. So we need to figure it out who is our audience, and get it done. And it has to be on a national level, be it one of the organizations. We need to sit together and figure it out. I think we don't have it, because every other year the messages change, the banners are changed, the font is changed, the names are changed, and so on and so forth. It's a good thing to be the oldest or one of the oldest winemaking countries. But the emphasis here is not just because we're the oldest. Why we are the oldest and why Armenia matters is more important, because of the terroir. And if we were the oldest, it is because of the terroir, it's not because of the technology. So we need to understand how to make the most out of this land and out of the knowledge that we have, including the history. The second thing is marketing is wonderful, but until you sell something, nothing happens. And we need to increase sales. This year, for example, I have a feeling we're going to have a grape glut because a lot of people planted vineyards and they're coming all bearing fruit last year, this year, and the next 2, 3 years. So we will have an oversupply of grapes. So if we don't resolve the sales angle of it, we will have an issue because now we're plateauing. People, we're not able to sell wine. Armenia is excluded. It's our home country, and there is sales growth, but not every country. We have different views of which countries are important, but in general, my feeling is that the U.S. should be the primary market because of messaging, because of the spending per capita, and so on and so forth. But that said, that could be the old one, and we need to look at what are our new markets we have to do. And all of that has to be data driven. We need to look at demographics, who are drinking, what are they drinking, and see which are the growing markets. Is it Singapore? Is it Thailand? Is it the Far East? Is it Korea? Is it China? We can't just rely on the basic and this also is very specialized work that the organizations need to do, spend time, money, and figure out where is our target. Is Korea important? Is Japan important? And why? How many people are drinking? Well, are they young? Are they old? Or whatever. And we have to be told so that we participate in those trade shows. Now we participate in trade shows that are filled in a form. Guys, next year, where do you want to participate? Depends on whatever reasons. We all fill in a form. So the year after is Shanghai in the wrong trade show, for example. I'm just bringing examples. I could be wrong. So we need to do these two things so that we can grow the business in an order of magnitude so that the revenue that comes in plus the visibility of the country at the end of the day, wine for whatever reason is a visit card, as we say. It's a door opener, and the Georgians know this very well. The Turks want to try to do it, but they can't because it is wine is kind of a reflection on the well-being of a country and so on and so forth. We all do it, and our model should be New Zealand that over the last 25 years or 20 years, they had 25 year-on-year growth, and now it is everywhere. So New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, they marketed it, they did it, and they get a premium for it, which is what we want. Because from 1 kilo of grapes, we want to make sure that we get value on that 1 kilo of grape by marketing it right and in the right places. With that, I will stop because that's the message that I would like to bring. We can discuss varieties, we can discuss elevation, we can discuss all of that. But if we don't have these two things, I think we can't propel the industry forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vahe. I already have jotted a couple of questions later for you, especially just to prepare your mind. I wanted to ask you and maybe other panelists later about the role of regulation in branding Armenian wines. Like there in other countries, there are strict rules. You cannot call a wine this unless blah, blah, blah. We'll come to that because I think it's all part of the branding. Okay,
Perfect.
Mary-Jan, you're next.
Thank you very much to everyone who has connected to the discussion. Thank you, Vahe, for introducing the main issues, you may say, for marketing and sales. I agree on some of the points because at this point, we are each of the producer is, you can say, blindly trying new markets by our own own expenses and time. And it is very important to have a community or an organization that will help you and guide you through this. Just a brief introduction. My name is Mary Hovhannisyan. I represent Voskevaz Winery, which is in northwest from Yerevan in Aragatoton province, located in the same name village, Voskevaz, which in translation in Armenian means golden bunch, golden grapevine. And this is the oldest functioning winery in Armenia. It was founded in 1932. Then it was called Voskevaz Wine Factory. But in 1997, as Voskevaz is a family winery, my father has bought the winery and you can say reinvented it. And each member of our family is trying our best. We are trying our best to have our input in the production, in marketing, in developing the winery as much as we can. So in 1997, my father, David Hovhannisyan, he bought the winery. And as you mentioned earlier, it was not interesting in terms of business to produce wine. It was very risky. It was even more riskier to produce high quality and high priced Armenian wine because we had the main consumed alcoholic beverage as vodka, which was 400, 500 AMD on the shelf. And now there are new producers which were considered to be a bit crazy because on the shelf, the final price of the bottle was 6,000, 8,000 AMD. And it was very challenging at first because the consumers were not also educated in wine because of the gap during Soviet period. Because of this segregation for each country, there was one production. For example, for Georgia, it was considered to be wine producing country, and Armenia was considered to be cognac brandy producing country. And we had this 60, unfortunately, 60, 70 years of gap in developing and having some interesting discussions about wine and having new achievements or experiments, etc. So each of the winemakers that are now game changers, they started 10 years ago, 20 years ago, blindly and taking very, very big risks in producing high quality wines. The second risky trope for us was to concentrate in the production only on local Armenian grape varieties, which was also very difficult. We had to tell people that Armenia, besides of its very interesting historical heritage, not subjectively, objectively has very interesting, high quality grape varieties, endemic grape varieties that had more than 5,000 years of history, for example, Areni or Voskehat endemic grape varieties. So we focused only on Armenian grape varieties and started the production. In 2013, we started massive construction works. If you have seen the winery, or maybe you can check our Instagram, Facebook profiles, Voskevaz Winery. This is a very interesting, you can say medieval styled castle, wine castle. We have kept only one part of old factory cellar, and the rest was done from zero. And my uncles, eldest uncle, Gago Hovhannisyan, which is a painter, and my youngest uncle, Armen Hovhannisyan, he is a jewelry maker. They came to Armenia and from their different countries, they came to Armenia and started to help us in construction works. And this was done in order to develop wine tourism, enoturism in Armenia, which was very, I think, interesting and it played central role for Aragatoton region, not only for Voskevaz, but also other wineries in Aragatoton like Vanardi and Armas. They had their input in developing enoturism in Aragatoton region. Mostly also it was interesting to create this environment in our village in Voskevas, because from ancient times, people have produced homemade wine in this village, and they have used ancient tools like amphoras, clay amphoras that we are calling karasis, and also ancient methods like lahani, which is the ripassimento, ripasto style, but used in Armenia since ancient times. And so having in mind this very interesting historical points, and also this heritage that we had in winemaking and also our history, we at Voskevas felt this deep responsibility to recreate, revive this legacy and put this in practice. So in 2014, we have started to produce our premium collection wines, which are called Voskevas Karasi collection. And for this, we incorporated ancient 19th century produced karasis, which we are hunting up to this day from each part of Armenia and bringing to the winery. They are very old, and they are very fragile, and we are working with them very carefully. We have created this beautiful, sophisticated, and high quality wines produced both from traditional ancient winemaking methods and combined with more modern methods. Thus, we are showing to our consumer that wine in Armenia can be both very, very connected to its land, to its history, to its heritage, but also can say its worth as a new rediscovering country in winemaking. So this was very helpful also in enotourism, in wine tourism, where people are come here, our consumers, our guests from different countries, from US, from Middle East, from European countries, Asia, people who are coming to Armenia as tourists, they have traveled. They have seen countries, they have tasted wines, they have tasted food, they know things. So besides quality and besides our history, we had to show them our famous Armenian hospitality also, because at the site, at the winery or at the region specific, they have the opportunity to meet the winemaker behind the wine, to meet the family behind the winery, to meet people behind the scene. And this creates a connection that cannot be created if someone will see a wine on the shelf. So this is also very helpful in developing enotourism in Armenia, in also regions, different regions like Vayostor, Armavir, and Taragatsotan. And I think that's it, because we have a lot of things going on at the winery. I don't know where to start, where to end. We have cultural college here, the aim of which is a bit social, not business. We are accenting on kids from this village, from this region, and we are teaching them different crafts, how to work with clay, how to make carpets. We are teaching them mathematics and different languages in order so they can find their inner talents for their country, for their village, and thus they won't think about leaving Armenia for at least 10, 20 years. So this social agenda was also very important for us.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you. I have a couple of questions for you too later on. Let's pass to Adam.
Thank you. Thank you, Vahan, for moderating this, and thank you, Hagop ARPA, for organizing this fantastic panel. I am new to the winemaking. As many of you know, I'm a technologist, entrepreneur, and investor. But in 2017, I decided to pursue my passion by starting a wine business in Armenia. And the idea was to really create crafting exceptionally great wines in Armenian terroir. And Vahan, you did a fantastic job in presenting the terroir. This is really my messaging. Terroir is everything. And so my focus on making wine is about terroir. Now, I will not go through all the attributes of what a terroir is. Vahan did an excellent job. looking at the terroir, Armenia has so many different terroirs. So obviously we have limited resources. So I decided to select three distinct terroirs to grow my wines in. It's very unusual for a winery to start with three different terroirs. So we have a terroir in Rind, in Viator area, which has not been planted yet. We have two other terroirs, one in Arakatsodan in Noryedesia, next to Armas, and another one in Brosjan, also on the border of Arakatsodan and Kotaik. We did extensive study on the soil and the climate and what type of grape varietal can do well in those terroirs. We did not limit ourselves into only indigenous Armenian varietal. Again, my business idea is not promoting Areni, Voskehat, Armenian. That's not my thing. My thing is to produce the best wine in Armenia, regardless if it's indigenous or international. So in Brosjan, we planted Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Riesling, Muscat, Voskehat, and Areni. As you can see, this is a large, we have large hectares of Chardonnay, producing a lot more than we're selling at this stage. Pinot Noir, the first Pinot Noir should be in the market next year. We've been tasting it and it's fantastic. We planted the first Riesling in Armenia and it's doing extremely well. It's different from the German Riesling because it's an Armenian Riesling. The terroir has a huge influence on it. It doesn't mean it's a bad Riesling or a great Riesling. It is different Riesling, and if you make it well, then I think people appreciate it. In Noryedesia, for example, we planted all the different Bordeaux varietals: Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Syrah, as well as Areni. And the reason we did Areni is one of our ideas is to have Areni from the three different terroirs, and every year compare the same Areni from three different terroirs and compare and contrast. Again, expressing the unique aspect of how the terroir affects the wine. We planted our vineyards with American rootstock, with the exception of Rind, which we have not planted anything, and over there we will probably do non-Armenian rootstock, more like the traditional way of planting vines in Viator region. One of the other reasons that we decided to promote international varietal, again, in my humble business opinion, and I get criticized for that I'm not making Armenian wine, which actually I don't agree with. Many of the international winemakers know the type of wine they like to drink. They like Pinot Noir, they like Riesling, they have Chardonnay, they have, Cabernet. But they don't know where Armenia is. If we start with Areni and Boskehat and others that they cannot pronounce, plus they don't know where Armenia is, it's really difficult to promote it. I know there is a historical link to the indigenous to the land, but it doesn't have to be true with indigenous grape varietal. It can be with terroir, as the Urartian found out that Armenia has excellent terroir. For example, I have given you lots of examples. New Zealand. I mean, Cabernet Sauvignon is not indigenous in New Zealand. Look at Malbec. It's not indigenous to Argentina, but they make exceptional Malbec. You look at Italy, which has over 4 or 5 different types of indigenous varietals, but some of the high-end super Tuscan wines and some of the Bordeaux varietal like Sassicaia, which is Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc, it fetches, over $1,000 for, but there's all French varietals, not Italian. Again, this made me believe that our approach is the right approach. Of course, we have to work on the messaging, and I'm not there yet. And I think I can say that some of our ideas been proven to be correct. For example, we've been able to get lots of accolades. Our white cuvée, which Vahan likes, which is a combination of Voskehat and Chardonnay. The first vintage, very young vineyard in 2021, got the silver medal at decanter. In subsequent year, like the 2023 vintage, got a gold medal in the San Diego competition. Then our Chardonnay, which is pure 100% Chardonnay, also got a gold medal, in the Los Angeles competition. So, our mission is really to make great wines, both international and local indigenous varietals, and sometimes mixing them to create new cuvées that actually doesn't exist anywhere. Now, there's also science behind, what we are doing. We measure everything, coming from technology background. We have state-of-the-art vineyard. I would say the most intensive vineyard in Armenia. It has 5,000 vines per hectare. You utilize technology, including weather sensors and drones in vineyard management, collecting data on humidity, temperature, rainfall, and other environmental factors. And I'm lucky to have an excellent winemaker by the name of Jeff Ritchie, who has over 30 years experience making wine. And we have excellent winemaking facilities. So we don't have our own winery right now. We make all of our wine at Armas. And so I try to create the best of the best, from vineyard to winemaking to facilities, and hopefully later getting the news out to the international consumers about the type of wine Armenia can make. For example, just to give you an idea, what does it take, to make wines at Alexandria? We have our vineyards and we have different blocks, and we harvest each block separately. Not only that, each block we monitor the different section and harvest them and put them in separate bins, and so we can ferment them in barrel or tank separately. So as Jeff, our winemaker, says, we need to learn about the vineyard. We need to listen to the vineyard to tell us what type of wine we can make. Of course, this becomes expensive because, it's not just getting everything at the same time and doing fermentation. But to create exceptionally great wines, you really have to measure everything, to monitor everything, so you can improve, learn, and continuously. So in my view, great wine can be created only by tracking everything. And vineyards that are poorly planted will punish you for the long time. And great wines are really made from great vineyards. You cannot make a great wine from low quality vineyard. And the farmers are the best winemakers. So my hats to all the viticulturists. In essence, to summarize my thesis, is the wine reflects the land where it was created. It is really a distilled essence of that land. And that's what I'm trying to do with Alexandria's winery project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. You made a very compelling case about diversifying grape varieties, but using Armenian terroir. So it's Armenian wine if it comes from Armenian terroir, even if it's not an indigenous Armenian grape kind of argument. But I'd like later to talk with you about something. In general, I agree with that approach. I agree also with the marketability, Chardonnay versus Khandoni, for example, that nobody can even pronounce. I agree all this. But we have an issue. We have very limited land in Armenia, and we have 400 or 500 types of indigenous Armenian grapes. I think it's part of our history, of our culture, of our identity even, to make sure that we don't lose a lot of these indigenous old grapes. Like there are some, I've seen some of these, okay? There's one little vine in the corner of a vineyard of Tozot, one here, one there, scattered. Those need to be, Tozot is just an example, which is something that Vahe did, but there are many others like this at the verge of being lost, really. And I think it will be a pity for Armenia, with this boom in the wine business, to lose indigenous grapes because of, either because we're expanding only Armenia and Voskeada and so on and so forth, and forgetting some of the others, or because we're using another kind of wine that they say it's Armenian, but it's not, that I have the same problem with. It has nothing to do with the wine. It has to do with the grape, that this hybrid wines, okay, the very popular Hachtanag, Garmerahut, Gankun, these are hybrid wines. Again, the hybrid grapes, the wines are, I have no verdict on the wine, they're good. But to use, if you have 1 acre of land, to use it for these rather than salvage a truly indigenous wine is where I sometimes feel bad. But anyway, that's for discussion later. Hagopjan, did any of the other panelists join?
Unfortunately, no, I don't see them, and I sent them an email and they didn't respond, so
Okay.
I don't know what happened, but
If that's the
Sorry.
case, I will circle back to Vahe with the question and then continue and then see how much, I don't know how much time do we have, but
there's no limitation on the time. You can go on as much as possible, but it's up to you.
But
okay.
be mindful that's 11 o'clock at night in Yerevan. And we're in harvest, so
Okay. We won't go much over, maybe. It's already been an hour, so we'll,
Another 30 minutes maybe. Go ahead.
I'm good until 12 o'clock. So
Okay.
okay. Vahejan, this issue about regulation, I'm mixed feelings about this. I'll tell you why. On the positive side, a lot of countries, I mean, the most famous is probably France. You know more about this than I do, that you cannot call something Bordeaux unless it has blah, 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 right? Everything is regulated because what they're trying to protect is the French wine brand. And the French wine brand needs to be protected with these meticulous regulations. As far as I know, Armenia doesn't have anything like this yet, which actually, in some ways, is the good news. Because to be honest with you, I wouldn't necessarily trust those who will regulate the wine to come. I think they may mess up a good thing going. I mean, part of the reason the Armenian wine industry has boomed so far is because government kind of has let it alone. They haven't interfered. If they had interfered, I think we would have had more problems than we have today. But at the same time, for the sake of promoting a kind of organized, unified, understandable Armenian brand, Armenian wine brand, some level of regulation may be required. What's your take on this? Where do you draw the balance? How do you see the land?
Okay, thanks for the question. Let's see. It's depends. I would say it depends because some places it works, some doesn't. But all the examples that you bring are mostly very, very established old regions like Burgundy. Burgundy, not only it's on a village level, it is on a sub level to vineyard level,
Yes.
and one vine, Batar Montrachet and Zir. The next wine is Montrachet, and the difference is a few $100 a bottle or euro a bottle. So it has taken hundreds of years. So we should not pretend that we can do it for basic reasons, because some of it we haven't. Let's take the most important, if we will, that has difference in terroir. It is the Vayotzor, the Arenit region. It has 12 villages, each at a different elevation, all south facing, and so on and so forth. So it has all of the makings of differentiation, at least to bring it to village level. Rind from Gedab to Arpi to Hachik village, and so on and so forth. So we have those in, let's say, the raw material to work with. What the problem is that we have anecdotal evidence that that piece of vineyard gives great grapes, but there's no scientific. We haven't, because we have not vinified from Rin this parcel, from Vahan or this one. So at best, if we want to attempt it, we can do some regulation of how the wine should be made, and if it's only from Aghavnadzor, you can call it Aghavnadzor, you can call it Rin. That basics we don't have. Below that, it's going to take generations, honestly, to be able to. But we have to do the basics so that somebody doesn't buy 5 tons of RNE and then produces 50 tons of RNE. So those are basic stuff. 15 years ago, I remember on one of the shelves there was it was Chardonnay, but it was red wine inside. We were on that level 10, 12 years ago. Now we have advanced a lot. And in some places, the brand is the guarantor and not the government. Like in the US, we have AVAs. They created AVAs, this river, that river, Russian river, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the consumers are deciding which brand to trust and so to do. But short answer, yes. And the first experiment we should do is Viotsor, because Viotsor has all of them. I'm not saying the rest, but usually, let's say, short of elevation is different. Norietesia is different than, let's say, a shorter village, but roughly the soils are similar, not identical, but similar. And that might be a little bit more. But that's the example of Bordeaux. Bordeaux, it can come, and then the next wine is not Chateau Angelus anymore, and it is a second growth, and so on and so forth. So it is possible, but they have in Bordeaux, they have studied Saint-Emilion to 50 centimeters, the subsoil and the stone and the level of clay and so on and so forth. So we shouldn't jump to there, but we should start with doing village level, because anecdotally we know, because of elevations, like Hachig is very different at 1800, Avnazor at 1250 to 1500, Rind, and so on and so forth. That we should do, yes.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. At some point,
By the way, there was a question about Sireni, Artinian, maybe because I don't see the thing, whether Sireni was salvaged, and the answer is yes. We have it planted in a few regions, in few projects, in from Tavush to Armavir to different areas. From just answering that specific question from a certain Artinian.
yeah.
Can we see the chats, by the way? Let me see.
By the way, there is a question directed to you, Vahe. Have you tried the Canadian market? Canada is trying to diversify market.
Yes, we do sell. The Canadian market is a beautiful market, just for the sole reason that it is a monopoly, and it is easier that one person might decide. And there are a lot of Armenian wines in. Actually, it's one of the easier markets to go in. But if you want to do certain volumes, then it has to be listed. It's not a homogeneous market. Quebec is a different. Ontario is a different. They're all monopolies. And you can bring it on the side and do this and that. And we don't. Our wines are present there. So is Garas, to my knowledge. Yes, Garas is definitely there, and a few of our wines are in Ontario, in Quebec. Yeah, it's a very good market, and good drinkers in the sophisticated manner.
And now, I mean, the whole idea here is that given Trump's tariffs, they may import less from California wines, and that
Yes,
more room
yes,
for Armenian wine.
yeah.
I would like to give Mary a chance. Mary John, you can respond to anything we've talked about so far, by the way. It doesn't have to be a direct question. I'd like this as little structure as possible, as long as we stick to certain time limits. But you gave a lot of importance to hospitality in your presentation. And I'm still very interested in the whole idea of educating consumers of wine. I'd love to be a situation where I go to an Armenian wedding and there's only one bottle of Ori and 200 bottles of wine, okay? But we haven't reached that stage yet. So there's still a generation that sticks to the old thing. In this hospitality and the wine tasting and the organized tours and all the stuff that you do, have you seen progress in educating the consumer about wine drinking?
Of course, there is change, massive change. Well, in domestic consumer, I think more than international, because we need to have a lot more resources to reach out to international consumer if they are not coming to Armenia. This means the governmental support, the thing that Vahe was talking about first, and also us going to different wine expos and reaching out to distributors and putting the correct message in our events, etc. And unfortunately, this may sound a bit odd, but not in every even good educated countries, people know where is Armenia. People don't know where is Armenia. People don't know our history, etc. And this is very difficult. It's very difficult to sell a wine from a country they don't have a clue about. And that is why we try to work very hard with our tourists. And it changed a bit for Armenian consumer during the pandemic when everything stopped. Nobody was coming to Armenia, and Armenians started to travel. Most of the Armenians didn't see interesting sightseeing places in Armenia. They didn't travel, they didn't eat much, they didn't drink Armenian food. Most of the Armenian consumers, up until 2020, they thought that if you order Armenian wine in the restaurant, it won't be good enough. They ordered French wine, even Georgian wine, not Armenian. And everything changed during the pandemic and starting from pandemic because they started to travel, they started to make wine tours, reservations during wine tours. And now, even I will say in 2022, I have seen changes, very fundamental changes in our consumer. When they are coming to a wine tasting, they were seeing the nuances and differences of, for example, Voskehat grape variety of for example, Zulal or Voskevas or Vanardi, and they were acknowledging the differences. They were seeing the interesting difference in terroir. Also, same Areni grape variety from Vayosdor was different to them. They understood the difference. They understood that from Aragatzotan, the terroir is mineral and minerality, and they knew the interesting nuances of grape varieties and also terroirs and also the terms, which is very interesting. So we are very glad that people started to travel, and this was easier to reach them, to, we'll say, educate them a bit during our wine tastings also. And when people from other countries travel to Armenia, I know it's very hard for them to pronounce some of the Armenian varietals, but it's interesting how they can compare with European grape varieties, and also this leaves a big impact on them. They will say, for example, they will go back to France and say, yes, we have tried something similar to Pinot Noir. It was endemic Armenian grape variety Areni, or we have tried Chardonnay, but have you tried Voskehat? And so this is very interesting in terms of educating them about Armenian and not so famous grape, for now, not so famous grape varieties. And yes,
Thank
I
you.
think I covered the question.
I'm getting more questions from the audience, but I'd like to ask one thing before I forget to Adam. And Vahejan, please feel free to chime in on this issue because I know it matters to you too. Look, Adam, I fully agree with you. Selling a Chardonnay that I'm talking about selling overseas, a grape they recognize or a Pinot Noir they recognize, and then they look, it's from Armenia, at least they know at least they know the grape, if not the place. When they don't know neither the place nor the grape, then it becomes even more difficult. So maybe the best way probably to make use of your wines is to sell our wine made in Armenia through a recognizable grape first, which is easier, and then gradually get them used to the wine made in Armenia with less recognizable grape names. So this concept, I don't mind, by the way, I like. My problem remains the limited land and the hundreds of indigenous grape varieties, which are at the verge, and some of them honestly are at the verge of being lost. And I know Vahe feels very strongly about this. And how do we draw a balance between doing what you're doing, which is, I think, from a global marketing perspective, is actually a good entry point, at least make the grape recognizable, if not the place. But then how do we make sure that this doesn't take off so much? Because there's a trend, there's a habit in Armenia of people copying each other, that this doesn't take up so much that the local brands get abandoned.
No, it's a good question. The key is balance, as you said. Look, when I looked at the landscape, very few people were doing international varietals. So to me, I was not really changing the course of the direction set by Vahe and others.
Let me interrupt 1 second. The very first wine that Vahe produced, Karas, was mostly Bordeaux blends, right? Bordeaux varieties. So there was some before, but
I said there was limited. I
yeah.
didn't say there was none. I said it was limited. And Karas is actually very successful in terms of promoting their wine. They make very good wine, thanks to Vahe, and he was the key winemaker at the time, and also helped them in sales and distribution. So look, there is also a business case. You need to look at it. I mean, people don't have unlimited resources. If I look at it purely from business point of view, there is no way I can invest huge resources to do research on indigenous varietal and then wait 20, 30 years for it to be recognizable and then start making money. So there are constraints. I mean, even if you're making a wine with international varietals, it's a generational business. The first 20 years you're spending money and not making money if you pursuing a high-end wine. So to me, this is something that we need to do long term. There should be resources through government incentives program. This is where, again, the government comes in, subsidizes many to revive the indigenous varietal to catalog them. But to me, if we create a large wine business in Armenia, and believe me, we have lots of land. So I'm not concerned about limitation of land. We have so much land. I go around, I can easily plant thousands of hectares of grapes in grape. To me, the issue is how we can make Armenia's wine business successful internationally. So lots of resources come in, lots of money comes in. It would be great if we have international winemakers get interest in Armenia, do joint venture, and from that resources, then do the long-term study to revive and to preserve some of the unique grape varietals that we can introduce later on. So I don't see that's necessarily my approach is really limiting the development of the Armenian indigenous varietal. The other aspect of what I'm doing, and I think Trinity through their Crossroad product, merging Armenian and international varieties together. Again, I have also a problem selling Chardonnay to California. People say, why do I need to buy Chardonnay? So it's not like, oh yeah, this is Chardonnay from Armenia. So, but my approach to the American market would be a blend. Says, oh yeah, there's a Chardonnay, which and there is a Bosque. Look, the East and the West dancing together. It's the old and the new.
Yeah.
And this is the way I believe we can make inroads into the international market. Again, I hope I'm right because I'm betting lots of money on the business.
Well, given your track record as a businessman, Adam, I'd bet on you. Don't worry.
Thank you.
There are some questions here which I don't want to ignore. Krikor Balabanian asked, at the Yerevan Wine Days festival earlier this year, I noticed a lot of new small-scale winemakers. Where is most of the wine being consumed, domestic market or export? Also, where do aspiring winemakers begin? Are there government incentives or programs that help them to set up their production? As an afterthought, Vahejan, we're blessed to receive Zulal here in Quebec. Thank you. but check the first two parts of the question. Anyone can answer, by the way. It's not directed to Vahe, this first part. It's anyone.
Um, Anyway, earlier, let me chime in before. May I,
Sure,
Vahanjan?
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, the choice of which variety you were mentioning that because I have experience having worked with from day one Garas project, which is mostly international varieties. This is a very personal choice. I am a very open market oriented person. It's a free economy, and if a businessman wants to bring whatever variety and plant it, he should have the right within the laws of the country to be able to do so. It is his issue afterwards how to market it, how to sell it, whether it's saleable or not. Because we cannot impose, and we should not impose on anyone who's making an investment to tell him, oh, you can put Chardonnay, but you can't do Pinot Noir or Armenia or Tozod or Rosquehat. Because we never know. The ultimate is, which I think Adam is on the right track, and all of us should be, what is the best wine you can take, you can make in this piece of world, in this piece of land. So in Tuscany, if it was Sassicaia Cabernet in an area where nobody cared for, in the Maremma, in 1965, he wrote Cabernet, and it became an iconic wine. So no one can tell what we should do. It is mostly thing. I mean, you bring you Chardonnay. Chardonnay is designed for a cooler region. It's not designed for warm areas like Armenia. But if you control yield, you do certain issues, you do whatever, then you might be able to do. It's a great grape. You know, my wines are all indigenous because I didn't have a choice. I didn't want a plant, and my positioning was indigenous. Just it's a personal choice that I did, but it shouldn't be to uh, limited to somebody telling someone else what grapes should be planted or not be planted. That's it's an investment, and the investor should have the right for himself or herself to be able to do it. So that is on the side. I forgot the first question. What was there was two other questions that needed some attention.
At
Oh,
the
the small producers.
small producer.
I would venture to say mostly in Armenia.
Yeah.
It could be that some are sold here and there. Some small producers are able to venture to the US. And when we're talking small, like 2,000 bottles or 1,000 bottles, the minute you reach 10 or 20,000, by the Armenian context, is not very small. 20,000 bottles is sizable. Then you have to most probably export to be able to. But Armenia is generous to all producers, so there's always enough restaurants and wine shops to be. My guess is that it's being absorbed mostly in Armenia, which has a very fast growth rate in consumption, by the way.
Yeah. There are a few other mostly comments, no questions, but let me see. Uh, I appreciate this. This is by, sorry, uh, Stepan Baldasaryan. I appreciate this discussion, but Vahe's initial point, Armenia and Armenian wineries should focus on marketing and promoting Armenian wines in the US and everywhere else and not rely on the Armenian wine importers. If we want to sell more Armenian wines, we should be promoting Armenian wines in a systemic and consistent manner. I mean, the idea being,
Can I answer that question?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Stepan Baltasar is a great guy, and he's a great promoter of Armenian wines, and he was the first to believe in my project. So I appreciate, and he did lots of marketing work for me, and I do appreciate that. But it is true that he actually single-handedly in the US is promoting wines of Armenia through his website, promoting different bundles and this and this. The problem for the wine producers like us, it's very difficult to spend huge marketing dollars to sell, certain thousands of bottles. It's not like we're selling hundreds of thousands of bottles in the US where we can have a larger marketing budget. I believe over time that will be self-correcting, but right now it is very difficult for Vahe or Boskevas or us and others to spend huge marketing dollars promoting Armenian wine. I think this is really something that the government of Armenia, or perhaps a consortium of all the winemakers who are exporting to Armenia, pay
Could be
some
that.
dues to promote a message. And that will take time to craft that, to bring us together, to say, okay, each one of us based on their production, and there's ways you can monitor that, to do a marketing budget to promote Armenian wines, because eventually we're not competing with each other. We're competing with the rest of the world. In
Yeah.
Armenia, we may be competing with each other, but the rest of the world, I mean, we're competing with all the other great houses that make great wine. So to me, but I don't have a mechanism to achieve that. And Vahe, perhaps with your extensive experience being first on the ground here, in new era of Armenian wine, and you have excellent pedigree in sales or marketing. Perhaps you can initiate something like that, which we can all take part in contributing. And uh, so, so to me, that would be the way to move forward.
Yeah. Vahe, if you have a comment on that, please go ahead.
No,
But it's a matter
no,
of
no, no. I agree because individually, one is the message gets diluted as to what we're doing. My approach has always been normally it's twofold. One, first, I sell Armenia, regardless of wherever I am, whatever presentation I'm doing, whatever sales pitch I'm doing, I sell Armenia first. Then I talk about my products. I don't go, mine is the best, and so on and so forth. I go, Armenia is the best. Armenia has the best terroir, or whatever it is that we're selling. So I agree with Adam that collective, the foundation and the wines of Armenia are one of them, but it has to be based on individual. But I'm not seeing much happening. We are hesitant, coming from a certain culture, to be able to say per bottle, I contribute this much. But it will happen, even if it starts with 10 producers bundled together. That's even better than individual. We don't have to engulf everybody. And we're doing that for the Vayotso region, by the way. We are grouping the Vayotso region association to promote that region, which is very normal thing to do, and it's pay for play. You pay, you participate in road shows, trade shows, and whatnot, messaging and whatnot, sharing of data, sharing of intelligence, and so on and so forth.
excellent. Um,
There's a question about wine being ordered directly.
uh,
Stepan might appreciate that message.
no, there is a question from Zanko Armenian. To Adam's point, that it is a generational effort. Do you see new generation in Armenia taking interest, and what is being done to prepare or educate subsequent generations? Is there an organization? Is there an organized effort or actual schools dedicated to this?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
The
there is.
answer, the answer is yes. For two. One is the Yerevan Wine Academy. It's already the 10th year. I know I'm the co-founder of it. And every year we graduate 18 to 20 students. And it's an 18-month course that teaches them from wine marketing to wine making to the chemistry and so on and so forth. And a lot of them are employed in Armenia, or some go do graduate work in other countries, in Germany and Australia. So that part is yes. And the first part of the question, there's a whole new generation of family, let's say, or winemakers coming, winemakers, and inherited like Mary, like my daughter, my son, and Banardi. There's Ani, for example. All of these, the old guard winemakers have the younger generation that is taking over. So it's in good hands. Let's put it that way. They're all dedicated, they can travel, they can take samples with them, I've done this 30 years. It's their turn now. We can do on a higher level perhaps certain things, but boots on the ground, it's left to them to do. The hitting European countries, not sleeping at night or drinking until 2 in the morning. It's this generation that they are doing it. A lot of the graduates from Yerevan Wine Academy have their own brands. I mean, literally, they created brands, they sell it, they promote it, they package it, and so on and so forth. So it's in good hands, Zanku, Armenian, John. It is. We just need to nudge it and push it a little on a faster pace. We should be more not just reactive but proactive.
Perfect. Question from Armen Avajian. Marketing and promotion strategies, branding and storytelling, wine critics and media, experimental marketing, digital and social media, target export markets. I'm just reading what's written. Cultural diplomacy, example, positioning, slogans. Armenia, where wine began 6,000 years in every glass, from volcanic soil to royal cellars, the rarest wines you've never tasted. That sounds interesting. For high-end markets, exclusively heritage and critical acclaim are everything. Once sommeliers and collectors are talking, the ripple spreads fast. Now, Armen also has a follow-up on this, also developing wine education and technology programs in Armenia, similar to UC Davis in California or Bordeaux wine schools in France. Would be game changer for the country wine industry, especially if the goal is to compete in premium and luxury markets. This education part is similar to the earlier question, I leave it open now to the panel to decide if they want to chime in any of these. But there is a more practical question here from Gary Artinian. Can wine be ordered directly from the winemaker in Armenia? Can you ship it directly to consumers? I don't think, well, you guys.
It's very difficult. People go to Invino and grab wine, and most of in Yerevan, the wine is accessible through like high-end stores and liquor shops. It's very difficult. Although Yerevan city, I think they ship wines if you order online, but directly from the winery, I don't know. Vahe, do you have any experience,
No,
or
we can
Mary?
ship. We can ship, but it's
Is
we
it
can ship,
practical?
but no,
Is it
not
practical?
at all. It's
Yeah,
prohibitively expensive. It's heavy. It's like it would be ridiculously priced to do air shipment or UPS and whatnot. I mean, it
yeah,
really doesn't make sense unless you're making $1,000 wines,
yeah,
where if the shipping cost is $60, who cares? But most of our wines are under $20. So by the time it gets to 60, depends on the market. So if you're in the US, there are a few places. One stop shop all is Wines of Armenia that Stepan Baldasarian has in California. That's perfect. Different wineries. You can do it from Remedy Liquor, which probably has all of them. Mission Liquor in California, and they ship it nationally. Storica has direct sales website. It is, of course, there's a margin added to it because if it's $5 here, it's most probably $15 to $20 in the US. But that's a normal markup. There's nothing unusual in this setup. In Europe, if someone is in Europe, there's Wines of Armenia where different winemakers store the wines in Berlin and then it's shipped directly. It's closer to the producer price without the markup of a retail shop. And so on and so forth. Depends on different markets. If you're in Singapore, I have my wines in Singapore. From there, we ship it in Singapore to Malaysia and so on and so forth. And then logistically, it's absolutely wonderful. Place the order, we ship it. But still, it's not like people are banging my door to get wines in Malaysia, Armenian wines. But if there's somebody who really wants it, yes, absolutely.
There's an interesting question from Hovhannisyan. Coming soon will be COP17, Biodiversity Conference in Armenia. Maybe you can use that as a platform. I mean, it's interesting. It's COP17 and the biodiversity and the climate, and maybe part of biodiversity is the varieties and the terroir and so on that we're talking about.
There,
Can the
I
winemakers
don't.
plug into that COP17?
They can. It's a wonderful platform. Next year, it's going to be in Armenia. And there is now, because of global warming, as absurd as it sounds, now people are hunting for two things. One, higher elevation vineyards, which we have abundance. So we are set for that. Again, I say, as absurd as it is, that we worry about where to make wine while we're cooking in the heat. But Armenia has higher plateaus, and now we make wine at 1800. We can go to 2000, 2200. There's an experiment, Maran Winery, at 2100 meters above sea level. So that one we are done. And now Europe is working on varieties that are later ripening, and we have a lot of those. For example, Chardonnay could be very early ripening, Bosquehad is late, RNA is late. These are late ripening varieties, so we can push. If it's a warm year, we can push it to either higher or longer. And some of our varieties might work in other countries, if they do research. So roughly at the COP 17, I think.
17, yeah.
17, yeah.
Yeah, COP 17. We can maybe have a panel that talks about biodiversity of different things, and I can look into it.
I think that would be a good idea. You'll have
Sure,
a
at least one
very,
presentation.
very
Yeah.
large captive audience. I have a short follow-up question on the issue you were discussing before, previous question about shipping here. I have noticed a consistent difference in the quality of Armenian wines that I taste in Yerevan versus here in California. Same exact bottle, same year, same everything. It seems to me something is going wrong either on the shipping, or maybe since I'm not in the motherland, I'm tasting it different, but I don't know if it's psychological or real. But does it change as it travels all that time? I mean, is there such a thing of erosion of quality from it?
No.
It's sure because
It should
Well,
not. It should not.
well,
It should not.
it depends. If it's shipped in a temperature controlled container, it should not be vary. But there is something that, for example, there's the term that they use. These wines don't travel well, and a certain rosé that you sit at Cannes and having mussels, it will definitely taste different than the same wine in California or Oklahoma. I mean, that's psychological. That's very, and we've gone through this with Armenian wines when I used to come here. And you have, this is in 98, 99, where you had to really struggle to find a drinkable wine. So, but we would drink some of almost vinegar, but because there we had Ararat in front, full view, there were duduks playing, and it was the best wine ever. And you take a few bottles home and you settle down in Berkeley, you open one and you go like, what the F? Where's this come from? And but technically it shouldn't. And I don't think any winery will do two batches. There's no such thing. I mean, it's no serious winery is going to do that. So it's always the same. It doesn't travel well because it's out of context, in my opinion. That's
but sometimes the damage
Uh,
happens after it arrives at a
yes. No, warehousing could
the,
affect
yeah.
temperature control, shipping, going through the Panama Canal in the heat. If it's a container is on top, not in the lower hold, and it's not temperature control, all you have to do is cook it a little bit, and it tastes different.
yeah,
Agopcha,
I think the temperature controlled. Not, I found out not everybody uses temperature controlled shipping, which I think it's a big mistake. And that affects the quality, and you have really no control for all the reasons you said. And also psychologically, and I'm probably repeating what it was said, the same wine you taste in the morning or after lunch and in the evening is very different. And what you're eating with your mood. So the fact that, you're now in completely different location has its own effect. But I believe that there's a bottle shock. I mean, after shipping wine, and I don't know where to store it, I would definitely wait a couple of weeks before opening it, and if not longer, before I drink it. So those are the facts. The factors that can affect the quality.
Hagop John, you had said let's extend half an hour. It's been extra half an hour. And our friends in Armenia, it's very late for them, but there are a few more questions here I'm getting. But
Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead if they're willing to.
are you guys willing to stay a few more minutes?
Yeah, we're fine. I'm fine.
I'm good for another 30 minutes. So
Okay.
I don't know about Mary, about you, but
There are a couple of more questions that they can. Yeah, sure.
Keushguerian.
Okay. Another question from Zanku. If normalization happens and borders open with Azerbaijan and Turkey, how do you see that affecting Armenia's wine industry? Will it be positive, negative? Do they make wines that could now compete with Armenian wines in Armenia, or will it be open and new market opportunities? I don't think. Do they make wines in Azerbaijan?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. They do international varieties. They have 2, 3 indigenous varieties. It's not going to compete. They're not a very. They have very big wineries funded by Azeri capital. It's not going to affect any. Nobody's going to drink Azeri wine. The effect will be in reduced if Turkey opens. Azerbaijan not as much, but if Turkey opens the border, then we have an excellent exit route to ship to export, because now we have the monopoly of only Georgia, and Georgia keeps playing games with us, blocking trucks, analyzing wines, and so on and so forth, because it's the only exit. We can't go through Iran because it's prohibited to ship alcohol. And if when Turkey opens the thing, it will, I'm not talking about global effect, but wine export, it will be easier.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
No?
Without getting into the politics of it, the effect would be positive.
Yeah.
More competitive, cheaper, and so on and so forth.
Currently, this is again from Armen Abajan. Currently, Portugal holds the title for the highest per capita wine consumption in the world. Are we promoting Armenian wines in Portugal?
Well, they drink Portuguese wine. Most wine producing countries, most of them will drink their own wine. And within region, or everyone in Bordeaux will drink Bordeaux. It's very rare that they will drink another region. So the French will continue doing French, except some Michelin star restaurants. They will take some Armenian wines and Lebanese wines and so on and so forth. Our biggest markets are the Nordic countries, countries that don't produce their own wine. UK, for example, is a huge market, and they buy from every country in the world, and so on and so forth. Portugal, specifically, it will be very, very difficult to sell. I just came from there. They drink a lot. They drink, it's in their culture. I'm not sure about the highest, maybe wine producing country per capita might be. I think Luxembourg holds the title of the per capita consumption. Yes, it does. Yeah, so
It's not a question, but I have a very nice comment from Armen Keushguerian. I just want to thank all the panel members and the moderator, as well as ARPA, for this most interesting webinar. I learned a lot. Thank you all. I had to share that with everybody.
good job, Armin.
And Armin, I hope you start drinking wine again.
Yeah, Armin needs to increase his consumption, I think. That's basically it, unless every panelist would like to make a final closing comments or remarks, that would be most welcome, and then we can close, Hagop.
Yes.
I just want to say, this is Armin, that yes, I drink wine once in a while. I love wine, but the problem is that that love is not reciprocal. So, I end up having problems after drinking wine. But we've been buying Armenian wine locally as well as from the Armenian wine web, and I've been enjoying it very much.
Thank you for
Thank you, Armin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Armin. You can buy and give to friends. Thank you.
In fact, that's what we do. We only give Armenian wine as gift.
Good job.
Thank
Armin.
you. Thank you. Good job. Thank you.
Any closing remarks, as Vahan suggested? Mary?
I just
I can say,
would like to,
oh, Mary,
yes.
go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
just would like to thank you for this opportunity to introduce our points and also to hear these interesting questions and also to see so many people that are interested in Armenian winemaking nowadays and our path and our journey, which is not an easy one, but everyone is trying their best. And thank you for staying with Armenian wine.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mary.
Adam?
Yeah, I just want to thank the Vahan for excellent panel moderation here with your 4 slide, which sets me up perfectly. Thank you. And for ARPA for organizing this venue for people to learn more about wine. And I think, as you can see, we are welcoming different types of winemaking style and innovation, because usually if you go to many regions of the world, the newcomers are the innovators, and they come up with new ideas. Some of them are crazy. They're crazy until they're very successful. Then, wow, how come nobody thought about it? So I think we should welcome different approaches in Armenian winemaking, because ultimately what we're trying to do is really promote Armenia and the land and the terroir. So with that, I just want to end my talk.
Thank you, Adam. Vahejan?
Well, yeah, first, of course, thank you, Vahan. Thank you, Hago, for organizing this. Thank you for everyone who participated in the webinar and learned more. Hopefully, they learned a little bit more about Armenian wine. I would like to emphasize that whatever we do, wine is a generational thing. And there's many sayings that with wine you plant a vineyard for your grandchildren. You don't do it for yourself. This is not tomato. That you do annual harvest. So we have to have patience. That said, though, we have a millennial start on everyone else. We have a start for 7,000 years, so we shouldn't ignore that, and we shouldn't be too timid. So we should use that, the whole cultural aspect of Armenia. It's in our DNA, it's in our manuscripts, in our kantag, in our khachkars, in churches, everywhere. So it's been with us for a long time. We just have to revive it a bit and not to be too timid and take our place in the history of, or replace it where we belong. Let's look at it that way, and let's give it a little bit push, everybody, all of us, to make it happen, because the growth of the Armenian wine industry is great for the country, because it's one of the few products that has higher value added, and it's any higher value added, it's great for the economy, good for revenue, and in general, it's a nice, healthy product to consume. With that, I close. Thank you. It's really been wonderful, more than I imagined it would be, honestly. Thank you, Vahanjan.
Bravo, everybody. I thank you, the panelists, very much. I mean, we managed, even though 2 out of 5 were missing, but we kind of managed to fill the time.
We did okay.
We did okay.
Yes.
Hagop,
Thank
last
you very
words are
much.
yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Vahe. Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Mary, for an excellent presentations. and also for, of course, Vahan for a good moderation. Our next panel discussion will be on evolution of the Armenian national identity. And the panelists will be Razmik Panosyan, Irina Kablanian, Herat Chilingirian, and Ara Sanjan. And the moderator will be Ani Shabazyan. You're all welcome. It will be on Saturday, October 4th at 11 a.m. again, and you should receive the emails. Thank you again, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.